And let's jump in and start talking about BuzzSumo's new media database. So, the good thing about having Nate here is we can get the real details on the problems we're solving and how we built this. But Nate, I'll let you take it from here and talk a bit about really
Yeah,
the pillars of how we try to build this.
yeah. There were a lot of really interesting things that we uncovered during user research. I don't ever try to pretend to be uh, a, a an industry expert, and that's obviously input from other people. I feel a good product manager's job is to just be a sort of focusing lens for what work actually people need to get done in their day jobs. So when we kicked off this research, we learned some really interesting things, and I'll come to the context of this slide in a second. But uh, we interviewed a number of PR professionals in different areas, and we steadily uncovered a few interesting things. One of them is, of course, that engaging and interacting with journalists, everyone on this call already knows this, is just qualitatively different than trying to engage with, for example, social media influencers, even if it's an organic initiative. So once we kind of honed in on what we'd actually need to do to make engagement with journalists and actually generating earned coverage through relationships with journalists, we collected all our research, and actually we looked at it and we thought, this looks familiar, right? So just to cover here what we have. So when you start, a lot of the feedback is the first thing I have to do is I have to build a relevant media list. If I'm about to contact people who don't care about my industry, or who are writing about something different, or who have transitioned jobs recently, and I just don't know that, et cetera, and that relevancy is off, you're in a garbage in, garbage out situation, right? So we wanted to make sure that the relevancy tools were there. That was direct research and feedback. But then what happens is when you actually go to pitch a journalist, there are critical elements to how that's done, as we have learned. And there are a number of things that like succinctness, and certain types of journalists prefer certain forms of communication. There's a bunch of nuance under here, but broadly speaking, you need to develop a relationship like maybe you develop any other relationship. So you have intimacy, which is to say, hey, I know what you're working on. I've got my most recent article pulled up here, and oh, wow, look at, like, this is so interesting, and let me help you see how it relates to what I'm trying to tell you about now. And of course, there's credibility. Journalists are folks who want to make sure that whatever they're writing is credible. So the sources they want to cite are credible, and you want to make sure that that credibility angle is also in the pitch. So again, we're recapping on stuff that maybe people know, but one of the things that we found is that the approach to building a product that contains these is inherently is a really important step, because oftentimes you can get the motions down of your product, but you can't get the details. The last thing I'll say about this, which kind of was fun, is if you take a step back, you realize this is a sort of formulation of the trust equation. So if you're unfamiliar with that, it's a really cool way of sort of understanding how you build trust. Um, and Go ahead and give it a Google. But basically, we're looking at the sort of journalist version of the trust equation, the specific relationship that we need to build on, the parameters of that relationship, and the product needs to directly support these. So that's where we started with our research.
Great. And so we took that research, and I'll say there's a lot of research, both done over the years and really directly heading up to that, just in tons of journalists spoken to, tons of PR folks spoken to as well. And so that was the overall methodology on the previous slide, and really the formula to what we think was successful. But we have to pull that together into a platform. And Nate, I'll let you take it from here. But these were the three areas that we knew we had to focus on when we actually came to building that database.
Yeah. So everything that I just said is very aspirational, right? Because uh, at the end of the day, you need to have good fundamentals. If your product is trying to do some fancy tricks, but the fundamentals aren't there, well, who cares? I mean, sports analogies abound, right? If you can't actually shoot a basket, you're probably not your fancy strategies probably aren't going to work out. So, what do you begin with? Well, you need a journalist contact database. We'll talk about what we were able to pull together in that respect. But then, once you've got the fundamentals of a classic media database presented to the best of your ability in the good user experience, et cetera, you have to layer on what you can actually achieve in terms of the aspiration that I was just referring to. So what we essentially discovered is that when it comes to building both relevancy and a direct intimate relationship with journalists that over time on behalf of your brand or as a brand, that the most critical element, or one of the most critical elements, and I don't think I'm surprising anybody when I say this, is up-to-date information. I think the fun twist for us was realizing that our content marketing history allowed us to index so much content around journalists and keep those updates so fresh that we were going to do a lot of interesting things pairing this media database with that content. And so I think it's kind of a fun problem to solve, where when you've got all of this content, where do you put it in the workflow? What specific changes and actions do you take to layer in this content in the right place at the right time? And we'll kind of look at like some of the ideas we had. And I'm very curious, anybody on the call is very welcome to say, well, that didn't work or that worked, but we get the up-to-date information. The last thing is really just focusing down on that journalist content and what it is, and allowing people to uncover it in the context of personalizing pitches and such. And so it's really a problem of scaled personalization, which it has occurred in other industries as well. And it's something that's really fascinating, where like you always have a less time than you want to do the type of work that you wish you could. And our idea is, what if you could have your cake and eat it too? And we think that content is the thing that powers that kind of approach.
Yeah, and for some context, for people that are familiar with BuzzSumo from before we had this feature and functionality, as head of customer success, I've spoken to thousands, literally, of customers and prospects, and there are a lot of people that were doing this workflow using BuzzSumo because they realized that the data was really valuable to get to know a journalist, both what they write about topically, where they publish, but also the impact they generate and how much engagement they're able to generate. And it's really cool to see they're able to take those workflows people are doing and just put them in one spot and make it a lot easier, and a lot easier to do, but also just easier to access and more apparent to everybody. So we talked about, okay, the three fundamentals. What are we trying to do? How we plan to the database? And here's some information on, well, what's actually in there? What does it look like on the other end? So Nate, I have curiosity. I didn't ask you this before, but what's your favorite stat in here from all the details we have?
I was going to say 330,000 profile updates a month, because it's just a ridiculous amount of information flowing into the system. About like how the media landscape, the people who write content in that media landscape is changing. But actually, the thing that I've been having the most fun with recently is the topics and beats. So I was on there the other day, and I was like, I wonder if I can find people who write about like Merck, politics, the pharmaceutical company, politics, and like space flight, right? And so you can just play with these amazing kind of combinations and angles, because what we're doing is we're using all our content to extract topics that journalists are writing about in their actual articles, and they're in their social media content. And so it just gives you this level of granularity that's just, I think the right word for it is playful. You just do these searches over and over, and you start to find and uncover these different angles. I just bash some stuff into the topic search and see what new possibly related journalists who you might not otherwise uncover are potentially receptive to your latest pitch.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been a lot of fun seeing those combinations, and I think it is fair to say it's hard to choose because it is cool that it's a living, breathing database. We see that in the amount of profile updates each month. So we won't go through every stat on here, but if you have any questions, you can ask us in the chat. So we talked a bit about journalist content as well, and I think we talked about it a bit abstractly and how it's helpful, but we want to go to some details. And this is all feedback and use cases we gathered from the industry, we gathered from customers and customer panels we've had, and just talk a bit about it. The first one on here, I'll take it, is really, I think, almost a good summation of the value of it and the value BuzzSumo brings to the table. So practice slow PR. And that's a term you may or may not have seen. We're seeing it more and more. We're having customers come to us talking about it, which is cool. And the goal of slow PR is to really, it's an understanding that you have to build relationships over time, right? You can't expect instant results and instant success. You can't just say, well, I sent a press release out to 1,000 people. I did my job for the day. You have to build those relationships, have those relationships in your pocket so you can get that ongoing coverage and really get to know those journalists. And understanding the content they create helps you do that, helps you understand who that journalist is, how you should outreach to them. Like, I actually was on a demo yesterday. I found this really cool journalist. We were looking up AI journalists. And this guy, by looking at his content, he also happened to be a ski fanatic and wrote about skiing on the side. And the person on the call was like, hey, I like skiing too. And they found an instant way to connect to that journalist. I'm going to follow up and see how it went. This is just yesterday afternoon. It's very timely for this call. But you have to build those relationships. You can't just blast things out. You have to ask for those virtual cups of coffee. And we're going to help you do that using all that content we have in our database.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take this one. Active journalists, right? So what are they writing about now? Where are they publishing? Are they even writing now, or are they on hiatus? If you build media lists that miss these key elements because it's even a month out of date or a week out of date, or sometimes even like a day out of date, I just find that I'm not going to deliver the type of product that are actually useful to PR people. The time for relevancy for your pitch is now, and the tools we build should reflect that. Pretty much all I have to say about that. So the faster we can get this stuff in, the better we'll serve everyone. I like this one too because it kind of links back to this notion that everybody's out here trying to find an angle, right? And so if you've got the types of search tools and relevancy and identification tools that actually allow you to uncover those angles on your industry, or the like tangential things that people are interested in skiing. There was another one the other day where we found a freelancer. I was working with somebody. We found a freelancer whose most popular coverage was on StarTrek.com actually. So she was writing very, very good content in a number of other spaces. But when you look at the social engagement that her content was driving, some of her number one articles were on Star Trek. I was just like, if you could just open that and personalize that pitch and open it with a Star Trek reference. That's the kind of thing that we're going for. This stuff that's been powered by our user research, and I'm just excited to build more tools like that. So this actually leads directly into this philosophy of help us help you. So there's been a lot of talk that we've heard and I've read about how newsrooms, and again, this I think is pretty clear to people, but newsrooms are very interested in social engagement targets and such. So BuzzSumo, I think we're somewhere north of 300 trillion social media engagement data points. I just want to fold that into the PR workflow, right? If a journalist knows that based on the characteristics of your pitch and what you're talking about, and it connects directly with some of their best engaging content that they've ever produced, it stands to reason that help us help you mentality might actually improve the engagement with your pitches and improve the overall relationships you have. And we think we can just do that directly. We don't think there's any complexity that we need to add to that process. We want to build tools, and I think we can build tools because of the data you have that will actually just allow you to make that statement, make that claim directly to the relationships you're building.
To sum up a little bit, we won't read everything on here, but we just think that this journalist content adds another factor that a lot of places are missing. And again, our goal with how we design this database, and you'll see in a second how the direction we hopefully push you in, is that you can take what the journalist writes about and really customize your outreach to them in a way that's going to get you noticed, get you to the top of the pile, and help you build that relationship and ultimately get that engagement you're looking for. Right, anything to add on this slide, Nate, or should we jump into the demo?
Nope, all good stuff. Let's look at it. Let's poke it and see if it actually works.
All right, this is always the fun part. So let's look at the platform and let's look at what this database looks like. So I'm on the BuzzSumo homepage. If I want to go and access the database, I'm going to go to this outreach section here and click on Media Database. So this is where all the fun starts. What type of journalist do you want to find? We can search by topic. We can search by outlet, bio, article language, recent article count, make sure they're active, location, and combine these in different ways to really hone in on the right people for us to outreach to. It is important to do that because from everything we're saying, hopefully you're getting the picture a little bit that we know the key to success. Again, this is from talking to journalists and talking to PR folks, is customization and targeting, not just blasting out to as many people as you can. So let's talk about how we can use this. So let's say I want to find journalists write about AI. Okay, that's a good start. Now I could specify a certain outlet, but we'll start broader and we'll say we want to find journalists who write about AI in the United States. Now we can even go in a bit more detail on location, get a bit more granular, but we'll keep it high level, hit search. And in just a couple of seconds, we're going to have a really nice list of AI journalists in the United States. So we can click on the profile and learn a bit more about them. So this is what our media profiles look like. So for read here, we're going to give you, I was going to say Twitter, I have to say X now, X followers, just a good pulse check on how much, type of following a journalist has there. We can in one click view all of Read's articles. So this is where that journalist content comes in. It's going to pop up in a few more places, but in one click, we're able to get a feel for what does Read write about typically. We're starting by total engagement here, but let's say, what has Read written about recently? Really easy to do that as well. Just really understand that journalist in a bit more depth and detail. And of course, we have that. Oh, went to click the wrong tab. Right here as well on the same screen. So you don't have to click around the platform. But for the BuzzSumo Pros, I want to show you where this was pulling from. We're going to show location. We're going to extract topics Read writes about as well. And I think, Nate, you called this out. There's 150,000 topics that we've tagged so far. So we have really broad set of topics and able to really hone in on the right people using them. And then the exciting part too is contact information is right here. So we're going to get email addresses, social handles as well. And there's two other buttons we didn't talk about yet. One is create alert. We're asked for this before we even started building the platform. We got amazing feedback about this from our customers so far. The great way to build a relationship with a journalist is to reach out after they write a piece of new content. Because like anybody else, maybe more so in some cases, journalists have egos. Yeah, sometimes it's worth stroking that ego, reaching out and being really relevant and saying, hey, Read, I loved that article you just wrote about topic XYZ. Would you mind connecting for a virtual cup of coffee? I think I might have some interesting things to talk to you about. You can be really timely and really topical using that. It's just one click. If I hit this button here, I get an email every time Read publish a new article. And then from here, I can also save to a media list. So I can make a new media list for AI and I could save Read right to it. So it really is that simple to use the platform, but you can really go into more depth and detail if you want to hone on the right people. So if we want to narrow this down, we want to see people who write about AI and marketing. Just takes a couple of clicks for us to do that as well. So we're narrowing this down more, and you can chain together different topics and different ideas to really find the right people to outreach to for your company or if you're an agency for your customers. And again, we can save them to the media list right here pretty quickly and easily. One really cool thing we do before I talk about the pitching, so I don't want to forget this, is when you look at the media list, or I should actually talk about the media list themselves a bit. We can find our list for AI. Is we can view the media list, we can export it, which will bring in all the contact and export all the contact information as all the topics and who the journalists are. But we can also review this media list in our content analyzer. So if you're familiar with BuzzSumo, I'm sure you use the content analyzer a ton. And What this does is it just opened up a search for content written by people on that media list. You can actually do it right here in the content analyzer without leaving it. You can filter any search by media list. So I can find, right now we're just finding all the content written by people on this list. But if I want to see, okay, well, within AI, who's written about Meta, for example, all I have to do is I can narrow that down. So this is great if you have a media list and you want to say, well, these are our go-to people we have relationships with. And I want to see if any of them have written about this topic that's relevant to my customer and the story I need to pitch. You can hone in on that right away. And you can also, or just have a broader industry list. Okay, these are the movers and shakers in the space, and narrow that down. Okay, who's written about this topic most recently? We're going to answer those questions for you really quickly, and again, help you reach out to the right people and start building those relationships.
Just a shout out to the trending tool. You can do the same exact thing with the trending tool. And we have some customers that just leave the trending tool tab open, leave it in a corner of your screen or whatever. And every single time somebody publishes new on your something new on your media list, it just throws it right up there for you. You see it immediately.
Yeah, great shout outs. This is how you'd use in the trending tool. If you're not familiar with the trending tool, give it a shot. For customers that use it, it's probably their favorite tool. We'll show you what's happening right now around any topic from any media list with a trending score, which just is the total number of shares in the last 15 minutes. So let's send a pitch now. So we built our list of journalists. Let's create a pitch. And it's pretty straightforward and simple. So I'm going to put in my email address. I'm going to choose the media list I want to reach out to. So we'll reach out to our AI list. And we're going to give you a nice, easy chance to confirm, okay, who are you sending this to? Who do you want to send this list to? So you can remove anyone from this specific pitch if, maybe you pitched them recently, you don't think they were a fit. Next, and this is a really cool one to see, we know that ideation is hard. We know that staring at a blank email is hard. We heard that from a lot of people. And so we integrated ChatGPT. Our goal with ChatGPT is not to say we're going to write the perfect pitch for you every time using ChatGPT. It's to give you a really strong kicking off point. So I'm going to write about our AI-driven journalist outreach tools. And I can even choose tonality. So I'll make it sound professional and hit generate pitch here. And again, our goal is to give you a format to use, some language to use to help you get started using ChatGPT. We're going to constantly refine this. We built in tons of best practices from this, and we workshopped it with a lot of folks in the industry as well to make sure we're building in those best practices. We're giving you a good format. The best feedback I've gotten so far has been about the subjects. I hate writing email subjects personally. I know sometimes I spend more time on the subject than I do on the email, I feel like, and this brings in a really nice AI generated subject for you. So let's say I want to send this out. All I have to do is hit next. And this is where that personalization comes in again. We want to put guide rails around as much as possible to help you be successful. And we know personalization is important. So for each journalist on here, we're able to let you quickly and easily personalize the email. So if I want to personalize for Martin here, I'm going to get his bio. I'm going to get the outlet he writes. We're going to get some recent articles. So I can say, okay, what does Martin write about quickly, or I should say, I'll quickly and easily see what Martin's written about. So maybe I can change the first line in each email to be a bit more personalized and say, hey, love the article you wrote about AMD's Q2 performance. A little generic, maybe Martin shouldn't be on this list, but have that little bit of customization and you're gonna be amazed at the results you have. And you can even regenerate the pitch into a different tone. If you're like, no, this guy works at the Wall Street Journal, maybe I should be a bit more professional. Okay, this person works at a different outlet. Maybe I should be a bit more friendly. Send a test email, preview it. And I'm not going to send these emails out to everybody right now, but all you have to do is hit next and be able to send them right from the platform. And then go back and even review stats. So any of your responses will go right to your inbox. But if you want to review high-level stats for the pitches you sent out to, you'll be able to send them in here: recipients, delivers, open rates, click rates, reply rates, and how many bounced. So hopefully that was a good overview and introduction to what we're doing in the BuzzSumo platform, and how we're taking all of that theory and all that data and putting it in a place where ultimately it will drive some success for you. All right, so back to the deck, and Nate's going to walk us through some cool things we have coming up on the horizon.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. Just want to talk about more fun things. By the way, feel free to just shout out future requests in the webinar chat. I might just build them. I mean, I don't, sky's the limit, right? So anyway, before we go into that level of chaos, I wanted to just show a few things that I thought we might do that were useful for probably the start of the workflow, so relevancy targeting. And it links directly back to, and I always try to make sure that we do this properly, links back to where we've uncovered key elements in user research of how people can improve the quality of their coverage. If I'm not building a tool that generates more earned coverage for the people who use BuzzSumo, I'm failing. So here's some things I think we can build that will actually help people generate that earned coverage. First, we're going to start to roll up average engagement for each journalist. So go back 1 second. I think this is really critical for 2 reasons. It shows you, this will be sortable, obviously. It shows you the folks who are really engaging with the audience, the topic you're searching on, the audience engagement 1, 2, right? It also shows you where they are effective on channels. And I think this for a sort of marketing mix approach, if you're collaborating with anybody else in the department, or if you've got other ideas about cross promotion of content, seeing where that journalist is successful on specific social channels could be really useful. Sort of nuance, and that nuance, that specificity is the soul of wit, right? That nuance should help us get you better coverage. Yeah, next slide. There's some research out there which I really like, which shows that if you pair kind of audience engagement with publisher authority, you can start to develop these really fun kind of pairings of reach, and then start to edge your way towards maybe a backlinking strategy. And maybe you can have your cake and eat it too if you find somebody with high engagement and a high level outlet tier. So we'll talk more about backlinks in future webinar, probably, because there's some interesting things we can do there. We index billions of backlinks as well. But for this, we think that it's really important for people to be able to target tiers. Now, this is not a top tier is best, right? There's a lot of interesting research out there that shows that sometimes you want to target like a mid-tier, maybe an industry publication. So this will be a filter, so that you can say, give me that national, international coverage I'm seeking, give me that industry trade coverage I'm seeking, or let me do a bottoms-up approach where I target a bunch of folks who've got up-and-coming blogs or Substacks or publishing on more of those niche publications. So we want to add this as well. And then the last thing is how people interact with that content. I mean, the tone that journalists want to strike is really important. So how people react to that content is really important too. So we have this data, and we're going to just roll it up for you and make it filterable.
What Nate said stands, we are constantly taking feedback from our customers about how we can help you do your job better and quicker and more successfully. And right now, what we just showed off was a combination of taking this data we have in different parts of the platform, putting it in one place to help you quickly pulse check how impactful a journalist is. And if you have any other thoughts, feedback, suggestion, please let us know. We really love to hear it. I think we have a really good track record of implementing a lot of it as well. So please make sure you reach out to us and let us know.
I'm so sorry. Zoom saw fit to switch all of my audio inputs and outputs to quote Microsoft Virtual, whatever that is. I won't try to do some kind of replay, but if you lost me at some crucial point, yeah. Anyway, apologies.
No worries, it happens, right? It's the world we live in on Zoom. But yeah, everyone, thanks for listening in. We're gonna answer some questions in a second. If you have any, pop them in the Q&A box. I saw a couple came in, but please put them in. Eleanor, I like your conspiracy theory in the chat. It's probably the case. Nate got hacked. What's coming up next? You're not going to want to miss our next webinar. We're really excited for it. We have Will and Kate dialing in from Rise at 7, and they're going to talk about what's one of everyone's favorite topics these days is how to create trends, particularly using TikTok. So how to not react to trends, how to create them for yourself, or if you're an agency on behalf of your clients. Kate and Will are great. It's going to be a really fun, really interesting webinar. So make sure you sign up for that one. We'll make sure we send an email out to everybody really soon. All right, so on to some questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so we can review, make it a little easier for me to review some of them. All right, some other questions coming in from Andrew Bruce Smith. Andrew, as always, thank you for joining. Any plans to integrate media site traffic data for outlets or article level view data, similar web or other web traffic data sources?
Yeah, we can. We've already got a relationship there that we could get similar web data. I think what would be a very interesting offline conversation. Andrew, I think we've spoken before actually, but I'd want to know how I could put it into a workflow where it was in the right place at the right time. I think maybe on the journalist card, maybe, but like how we summarize that usefully could be a really interesting conversation because we do have access to similar web data. I'm just kind of trying to figure out how to prioritize it and where to make it useful. But it's a great point, something that I've been thinking about, but I need a little bit more help sort of crafting how we should execute it.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, from my perspective, talking to a lot of people too, it's important to keep in mind those tools are estimates, and the reason we love social engagement, it's a real hard number that we get from the partnerships we have with these social networks. We're constantly updating, and I think for the experts in this call, you absolutely know when and where to use data from a place like SimilarWeb. So I'm not telling you don't use it. You guys know what you're doing. But for people that, a lot of our customers are newer to PR and kind of dipping their toe in the water, we want to start with real data, which is social engagement data. And, later on, we can talk about implementing it. We do use domain authority. And the reason for that is because SimilarWeb doesn't know the exact traffic BuzzSumo gets. Making an estimate, it's not incredibly accurate, if I'm being honest, for us, from what we've been able to compare. But we use domain authority because it's more of a score from 0 to 100. So for us, it's a bit easier we think for our clients, in some cases, wrap their heads around the rough equivalency of like what a 40 is versus 60, than getting stuck saying, okay, this has 20,000 traffic, this has 40,000 traffic, where they might really be the same on that particular article level. And again, that's the other differentiation is we want to always stay article level versus domain level, which is what places like SimilarWeb focus on. So the bottom line is I have strong thoughts about that too, but we always want to hear how everyone's using it. Is the AI pitch generator powered by ChatGPT? Does this mean it'll be using the prompts information you put into feed pitches of people as well? Like, for example, we'll tell that our brand has found X% of people that are doing something. Will this then appear in someone else's pitch? Nate, I'll let you answer this one.
Yeah, no, we're not doing anything like on our end that aggregates any information. We're very, very aware that pitches could contain some degree of privileged information, or at least something that you would hopefully give somebody a scoop on. So no, what we do is we pass the prompt to OpenAI's ChatGPT API. Now they have a terms of service that says we will anonymize this sometimes and occasionally use it to retrain our models. And so we have something under the generative AI piece that very clearly lays out what you should be aware of in terms of the OpenAI stuff. But we're trying to do our best to make sure that we are using transparent industry standards. And I don't think we'll ever move to a position where we would try to aggregate that data because, frankly, the way the models perform out of the box is pretty impressive. And there was a really interesting internal discussion a few months ago about how implementing these new generative AI models is as much about the user experience as it is about the actual machine learning underneath. And so what we need to nail, I think, is how you integrate a prompt-tuned ChatGPT implementation, how you implement that into a workflow properly so that it's productive and useful for folks who need to get things done efficiently and don't want to have 50 tabs open or whatever, as opposed to like us, taking all your data that you've given us and doing some kind of one-shot training on top.
We'd love your feedback as you're using the tool, good, bad, otherwise, neutral, whatever it is, just let us know. Like I said, we have a very good track record. Nate will dig right in and respond to you. I'll dig right in and respond to you. We'd love to hear from everybody. One more question from Shane, or one question from Shane is, how are we determining what topics a journalist writes about? So I think that refers to those journalist profiles we have in our database. So how are we pulling out those topics?
Yeah, so number one is we look at all the articles Yeah, exactly. Number one is we look at all the articles that we have indexed, and we look at the topics within both the headline and the body of the article. We've got to do some more work on that fine tuning. It's just the scale of the content is significant.
Yeah, and that's some good feedback we got from customers. And I think that number we shared earlier about, I think the 350 or 330,000 updates we have each month, which goes up each month, shows that if a journalist changed what they write about or a story develops, right? Like where was the ChatGPT 2 years ago? We are going to make sure they are tagged, not if they just write about it once or they use the hashtag once. To Nate's point, we have some filtering. We don't want noise. But if that journalist starts writing about a topic, we don't have to have any manual intervention. It's going to be updated. All right, just check to see if there's any more questions popping in. Looks like that's it for today. So everyone, thank you so much for joining. It was fun chatting with all of you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully it's useful. And again, if you have any recommendations, if you're using it, we want to hear from engaged people, and we want to make this better and genuinely useful. So we're all ears.
And if you haven't used it yet, just let us know. We're going to let us know. Sign up for a free 30-day trial. If you are an existing BuzzSumo user and you want to sample the journalist database, we're happy to set that up for you too. Just write into us at help@buzzsumo.com. We'd love to let you try it as well. But otherwise, it was great speaking to everyone and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.